Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Rex Reviews Godzilla, where I'm reviewing every Godzilla film in release order. And today I'm here to talk to you about Terror of Mechagodzilla. I have some notes in front of me that I'll go over briefly to just talk about, the movie in general. Like first, I want to talk about the budget, the release date, and details like that. I'll talk a little bit about what I remember of this film from my childhood, and then we're gonna get into like the plot and what really stood out to me in this film. um, if you want to check out any of my other reviews, they're in a playlist here on the channel. If you don't know, I loved Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. I think since the original Gojira film, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla has been my favorite so far. It just blew me away. And the director of that film, June, I can't remember his last name. I'm so sorry. But it was his last Godzilla film that he directed, and he went out on top, man. I thought that film was like fantastic. For me, that was easily a 9 or a 10 Godzilla film. So I'm excited about this one, Terror of Mechagodzilla, which is a direct sequel, a direct continuation of that movie, which we have not seen much of here in the Showa era. Godzilla Raids Again was a direct sequel, but it did feel like a much different film. This is literally this could have just been Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. The name is very interesting, Terror of Mechagodzilla, but I kind of like it in a weird way because this movie does have a lot of horror elements to it, especially in the soundtrack. But before I really get into a lot of my opinions, let's just take a look at like some of the details around the making of the film. So the release date was March 15th, 1975. Ishiro Honda is back directing. This was his final film that he directed. And I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't think this is as good as Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, but outside of the original Godzilla film, this might be my favorite that he's directed. I would have to go back and look at Invasion of Astro Monster and Destroy All Monsters, and I would have to look at some of the other films that he's directed. I think he directed those too. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. You can correct me in the comments. But I, with Honda, I've been, the first film was so perfect. I have been more divided on films in the middle of the Showa era, but I think that it also has to do with the fact that they decided to annualize these films, and several of these films the budgets were cut drastically. So it's hard for me to put that on a director or one writer or a group of writers or a special effects. Like, I really can't blame anyone. I just think the franchise, in my opinion, was mishandled by Toho. So criticisms that I've had about these directors previously, I do keep that in mind, and I hope that you'll keep it in mind before you leave a comment on the videos. Anyway, the writer is interesting, Yukiko Takayama. So this is later in my notes, but I'll go ahead and discuss it now. This situation around the writing of this film is extremely interesting because she entered a contest. I didn't know this until I was looking this up to kind of research this film a little bit. But she entered a contest and submitted a story for a Godzilla film to Toho, and they actually liked it so much they picked it up. Now, her script was revised 3 or 4 different times, and I think that the last or next to last revisions had to remove a lot of content because of the budget. And I want to go ahead and tell you now that the budget for this film is disputed, as you can see here. Now, ChatGPT says that there's been a 1.2 million figure that has been repeated. I could not find any direct documentation of this. I didn't spend hours researching it, but I don't really know what the budget was here. If I had to guess based on what I've seen of the film, I think the budget was maybe around the same as Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla or Godzilla vs. Hedorah, but maybe slightly less because there is a little bit less monster action in this film, and but at the same time the special effects are incredible. So there is a little bit more, slightly more, I think, stock footage used in this film, but it's very minor. So I think that this film had a good budget, but I do think it may have been slightly lower than Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Anyway, I just think it's awesome that a fan And by the way, she went on to write more films and even direct her own films. She even directed a film in 2004, which was when I graduated high school, that apparently is one of her best pieces of work. So I might have to check that out sometime. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, this was her first time, I think, ever writing a film, and she just submitted her story and her script to Toho as part of a contest, won it, and we got Terror of Mechagodzilla out of her writing ability. So I just think that's so awesome, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Music, Akira Ifukube, sorry, returns. He fucking slays on this soundtrack. You have that same orchestral, military, like dramatic music returning, and some of the same orchestral pieces returning from previous Godzilla films, but there's some new ones here that are decidedly horror. Like the music in this film is incredible in terms of the way that it accentuates the drama and the horror and the gravity of the monster scenes and the destruction scenes, and particularly with like building tension in this film before things really pop off. This is, in my opinion, one of his best pieces of work, one of his best soundtracks, or whatever you want to call it. I love the music in this film. It really feels like he got a little bit experimental. I think with Akira, with what he's written for Ishiro Honda, I think that his music, the soundtracks are pretty predictable for the most part in the previous films. I don't mean that in a negative way, but here in Terror of Mechagodzilla, it really feels like he wanted to experiment with sounds directly influenced by horror, and I love it. So I just wanted to talk about that. Your main characters are Akira Ichinose, who is a marine biologist who assists the investigation into Titanosaurus, becomes romantically involved with Katsura, who is Dr. Mifune's daughter. She does a great job. I think the acting in this film is a real mixed bag, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Um, the point is, she is Dr. Mifune's daughter, secretly a cyborg after being saved by the aliens, and eventually becomes a living control system for Mechagodzilla. Dr. Shinzei Mifune, who is Ikehiko Hirata. This is Dr. Serizawa, the actor for Dr. Serizawa. His final film in the Godzilla film franchise as well. And it was so weird. I did not even know that this was the same actor. When I found out that this was the same actor that played Dr. Serizawa, I had to like really pay attention because he plays an older, disgraced scientist in this film, and he just looks so different. He put on a little bit of weight, I think, maybe wearing a wig. I'm not really sure, but he didn't look anything like himself, and the performance is very different than performances that he's done before, that I remember, that I associate him with. So a very dramatic performance, and it was just different, man. But this was his final film, so I'm glad that he was here for that him and Ishiro Honda were here together for the final film. Um, Jiro Murakoshi, who is an Interpol agent, Ichinosi's friend, investigates Mifune and the black hole aliens. So the same aliens are back. And Mifune, he's a disgraced marine biologist that discovered Titanosaurus and wants to develop technology to control it, and wants revenge on the scientific community that rejected him. Mughal, who is the leader of the Black Hole Planet 3 aliens. So he's the same leader that is here, that was here before. I just want to make a brief note about the casting of this film. They brought back several actors from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and then recast them in completely different roles. Like even Mughal or whatever, Goro Mutsumi returns. So he was the leader of the black hole aliens. He was like the commander in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. He's the commander here, but he has a different name. He's working for the same aliens, same organization. He's in the same position, same look, but has a different name, and I don't know why they did that. And then several other characters are brought back, including Dr. Serizawa, who was, he had a previous role in the previous film, that I don't remember very well. At least that's what I read. I could be wrong. And then he's brought back as Dr. Shinzo Mifune here. other actors who were like main characters in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla are brought back, and in some cases they're only in this film for 5 minutes as like a side character. It's really strange. I don't know why they did it. I think they just expected that their audience wouldn't care or notice or whatever, but I noticed, and I thought it was really strange that, this is a direct sequel. So we're not even talking about, it's in the same universe. It's a direct sequel to the previous movie. It even starts with a recap during the opening credits of the film, with a recap of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And by the way, the opening of this film is fucking epic. So it's a direct sequel, and characters come back, or actors come back from the previous film, main characters from the previous film, and they're playing different characters in this film. Super odd decision. I don't really understand it, but it is what it is. I don't think it greatly hurts this film, but it's just weird. You know what I mean? Ratings. So IMDb, this is sitting at a 6.1 out of 10. I'm a little bit higher than that. I think that for me, this film is, a 7 or an 8, depending on, depending on how you weigh the monster action that you get versus how long you have to wait to get it, and how you weigh the like kind of tropey, over dramatic performances of some of the actors, which I've said this before, and I'm sorry about repeating myself in every video, but I really try not to judge the acting because I'm watching the Criterion Collection and I don't speak Japanese. I'm watching these in Japanese with English subtitles. I don't feel like I can really judge the acting per se. So, when I talk about performances and acting and stuff like that, I don't mean that personally against the actors, because I know there's a cultural barrier there, and there's also like a 50-year time gap there as well. So, I am keeping that in mind. But for me, I think that this film is definitely above a 6, personally. Rotten Tomatoes, 43% critics, but that's only on like 7 reviews, so you can't even really count that. 60% audience. Some special notes about this. This is the 15th Godzilla film. It is the final film of the original Showa era. Honda's final film, direct sequel. Let's see, last movie until the return of Godzilla. I, I can't wait. I'm getting emotional. Like the return of Godzilla 1985 in America is the film that I remember most from my childhood, and it was the film that I watched on repeat nonstop. It's I'll talk about it when we get there, but I'm so excited to get to that film. Um, uh, Poor office performance helped send the series into its long hiatus. This is crazy to me. This is the most, or I'm sorry, this is the least attended Godzilla film in movie theaters up to this point. Out of the Showa era, this was the least attended in theaters, and I don't know why. Like, I really don't know why. I'm so curious about that. I feel like there has to be other factors that go into that, that explain that. Because the film is not that bad. It definitely doesn't deserve to be like the lowest attended film. It doesn't deserve that at all. So I'm so curious about the why the box office performance was so bad, because this film does have areas that are not great, but I think that this is like probably still in my top 5 or 6 Showa era films, honestly. So I am surprised by the poor box office performance. We talked about the girl that wrote the screenplay. It was her first one ever that was produced. Incredible. I think for her first screenplay, incredible. Darker than most later Showa films, it is. I mean, this does have heavy, themes: cyborg experimentation, death, suicide, tragic romance, etc., and nudity. So I mentioned this in what film was it, guys? It was Godzilla versus Megalon, I think. That I saw nudity in that film. They had like nude magazine clippings on like the back of a truck in the background. And I was like, I've never seen nudity in a Godzilla film. And there's nudity in this one as well. It's a prosthetic that's shown during a sequence where Katsura, did I say her name right? Yeah, Katsura is getting operated on. They're doing surgery on her stomach, and her breasts are exposed, but it's a prosthetic. But still, it reminded me that every time I've watched these Godzilla films, I've pretty much always, I was a child. My parents rented them from Blockbuster. They were edited, or more so, I used to watch Monster Vision on TV. I don't know if any of you remember Monster Vision, but in America, it was a TV show that came on. I think the channel was TNT, and Monster Vision came out on like Friday night or Saturday night. It was like Friday night Monster Vision. I can't remember, but I think it came out. It came on once a week. And they would just show like 2 hours of monster movies or something like that. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the Godzilla films I either saw like rented from Blockbuster Video or were like heavily edited TV edits, American TV edits. So now I'm sitting here wondering, well, what else have I not seen? So yeah, there was nudity in this. This is the first time that there's actually been like a character nude with just exposed breasts. It's prosthetic, but still, just shocked to see that in Godzilla films. I've watched Godzilla my whole life, and embarking on this journey to do these reviews is the first time I've seen nudity in the film. So anyway, now that I've kind of gone over like some of the basics, let me talk a little bit about what I remembered from my childhood of this film, because I did like Terror of Mechagodzilla as a kid, and I watched this movie many, many times. I remember having this on a VHS tape. It was recorded from TV, or it was recorded from like a Blockbuster Video. Like if you're old enough, you remember that we would have like a VCR hooked up to another VCR that was then hooked up to the TV or something, or a VCR that one cable went to another VCR and another cable went to the TV, so that you could make a copy of the tape while you watch the movie. Crazy. So I had this on a VHS tape along with the film Young Einstein. I don't know if anybody here has ever seen that film. I don't remember Young Einstein very well, but I remember watching it quite a bit when I was younger, and I would watch Young Einstein and Terror of Mechagodzilla because they were on the same tape. I remember really liking this film. I remember that the soundtrack always stuck with me as a kid, because it was unique, and it was the soundtrack had so much dread and horror in it. I remember the story with the girl that was a robot, and she has a death scene at the end of the film that was very tragic. I do not remember. I think it was edited. Her committing suicide in the film was edited out in the version that I had seen. I do not remember her shooting herself with one of the alien guns. So I cannot remember how she died in the edit, but I remember it was a really sad scene. I remember, Titanosaurus, especially the sound that Titanosaurus makes when it roars. It's I don't know what they used for the sound of Titanosaurus, but it was perfect. It has such a unique, standout voice and roar, or whatever you want to call it. It's very unique, and I liked it very much. The submarine scene at the beginning of the film, where Titanosaurus destroys the first submarine, reminds me so much of the beginning of The Return of Godzilla, which is my favorite Godzilla film, or at least it was throughout my whole life. It probably always will be, because it was my favorite film as a child. It was the film that made me just obsess over Godzilla. And, no matter how good any film is after that, it can't take that spot. So I think Godzilla 1984-85 is always going to be my favorite. And I know that I'm here to talk about Terror, but I will just always glaze that film any chance I get. I'm sorry. But the opening did remind me of the opening of Godzilla 1984. The scene where the fishermen, I think, are on the boat, and then Godzilla emerges out of the mountain next to them, and the horror and the buildup and the destruction, the fear. You get a lot of that here, and it's a great opening. I think it's a really good introduction to Titanosaurus as well. In fact, the cinematography is, that's another thing I have to mention because this is the first time I saw it in the opening of the film. Titanosaurus, when Titanosaurus emerges out of the water to destroy the submarine, they this is so brilliant, and I don't know why it wasn't done more earlier. Maybe it was like technological limitations. They shoot it like the cameraman is laying on his back with the camera looking up at the suit actor. So Titanosaurus looks fucking massive. They do such a good job of making the monsters look massive here. The set pieces are great. The miniatures and like the miniature buildings and sets that are destroyed, they might not be the best in the series. It's hard to tell. Like some of the tanks and stuff that they show, it's like, okay, that's obviously a toy, but that's kind of always true, isn't it? They're really good. That's all that matters. And the destruction sequences are fucking great in this film. But yeah, I just love that camera angle, and I love that they use that in this film for the monsters, for Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and Titanosaurus. They shoot the monsters. I'm sorry, I'm adjusting my hat so much. They shoot the monsters like with the camera down, like aimed up at the suit actor, and it makes them look massive. And I just think it's so cool. Um, I remembered the ending scene of this, where Godzilla is leaving. It's probably the saddest ending of any Godzilla movie, almost. Almost. It's up there though. Godzilla's leaving in the water, and it's after the tragic death of Katsura, and they kind of lay her to rest on the mountainside, and they watch Godzilla leaving, and the camera pans out, and it's just it's something about it is just lonely. Like I get emotional talking about it. Something about the music, like Akira, just fucking the music is so good in this film, and I don't even know why it's so sad, but there's just something about like this lonely like pulling out of the cam as Godzilla is leaving at the end of the film, that is just something about it just feels like tragic and sad. It's just done so well, and I think it's a real testament to the composer. Like, what an incredible fucking job he did. Like, I know I'm sucking his dick, but he just did incredible. And I really think that when I think about, like, okay, so this film is a real mixed bag, like you have the weird recasting, and then the aliens, like, so they improved the aliens. They look good. Their outfits aren't ridiculous. Which, I mean, they weren't ridiculous in the previous film. The best thing they did with the aliens here from Black Hole Planet 3 is, one, they do more to explain why they're working with Dr. Mifune. So the aliens save Dr. Mifune's daughter, which, is how they get him in debt to them. And then they have one alien who is pretending to be a financial backer. I think it's important to note that I don't believe Dr. Mifune knows that these financial backers that saved his daughter, et cetera, are aliens in the film until, they reveal Mechagodzilla to him, which is, I don't know, roughly like, 30, 40 minutes into the film, halfway through the film or somewhere, they reveal that. But regardless, they save his daughter. He's a failed scientist who's been rejected from the science community because he claimed that he discovered a dinosaur, and he wanted to develop technology to control that dinosaur as well as control other animals. And people were like, they felt like that was unethical, and so he was shunned from the scientific community. So not only that, but his wife, it's revealed in the film that his wife, died, tragically impoverished, supporting him until the end, trying to support his scientific endeavors, his research, his attempts to redeem himself after being shunned from the scientific community. So there's a real tragic backstory to this family. You never see the mother, but it's explained later how she died. And she died like with nothing to her name, impoverished, et cetera, et cetera. Even their home is like in the back of the woods, and it looks dirty and abandoned. But anyway, so in the previous film, I was like, why would the aliens need to work with an Earth scientist, for Mechagodzilla, to repair Mechagodzilla? Why would a human scientist understand their technology better than them, But in this film, they explain more about how they, this doctor has discovered Titanosaurus. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of the name, but I don't think it's terrible either. It's like a 7 out of 10 name to me for what it's worth. I don't know why. I just feel like saying that. It's not a big deal. But they want to work with him because he has Titanosaurus, and they want Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus to work together to destroy Earth. And they know that he hates humanity and he hates people because of, what they did to his family and what they did to his career. Uh, and also, they want to use his daughter after turning her into a cyborg. They realized during the film that they could also put Mechagodzilla's controller in her now that she's a cyborg, and they can have her controlling Mechagodzilla. So a combination of her organic brain with the controls for Mechagodzilla and the way that Mechagodzilla is built, they feel like it'll make Mechagodzilla superior. So at least there's like a more reasonable explanation for them working with humans. And I like that. And it also addresses, lessons that they've learned from the previous film, because when their command center is destroyed, it doesn't disable Mechagodzilla. I love that. They also address Mechagodzilla's weakness from the first film, where Godzilla, broke Mechagodzilla's neck and decapitated Mechagodzilla, and then like Mechagodzilla was basically done for and then exploded. They've made adjustments to Mechagodzilla in this film. They've rebuilt Mechagodzilla. They've made adjustments, and later in the film, at the end of the film, when Godzilla does that again, he breaks its neck and rips its head off, which is so sick. It's just, the whole scene is sick. The whole scene is sick, honestly. Like, Godzilla, it's at the end of the fight, and I know I'm jumping all around, but fuck it. It's at the end of the fight. Titanosaurus is down. Godzilla is rushing towards Mechagodzilla, and Mechagodzilla fires off every weapon it has: the eye beams, the finger rockets, the knees, the toe rockets, the chest laser, like everything is just going off at one time. And Godzilla is literally running through this hail of like fire and lasers, and everything's exploding around him. And at one point, it even looks like Mechagodzilla stops him. But then he keeps going, more explosions around him. He gets set on fire while he's running, but he manages to run through all of it and make it to Mechagodzilla and start beating his fucking ass. This film has the best, some of the best, maybe the best monster hand-to-hand combat sequences, and it's definitely filmed the best. Again, they have like the camera get right under the monsters, going straight up, so you can see them boxing and like headbutting each other and punching each other from like up under, like if you were a human standing between them looking up at them. Fucking excellent. I don't know, again, I don't know who thought of this, but I hope that person got a raise or something, something of note, because it made such a big difference. Like, the fight scenes in this are incredible. You have to wait a long time to get them, but they are incredible in my opinion. And Godzilla runs through that hail of fire, gets to Mechagodzilla, starts beating the shit out of him, punching him, trying to break his arm, gets his tail, spins him around, grabs the neck, starts punching him in the head, and then breaks the neck. But this time, because of the adjustments the aliens have made, it's not over. They have like this little bulb with a visor on it that can still shoot a laser. And honestly, it looks like it shoots an upgraded version of Mechagodzilla's eye beams. Almost like it's like the same beam, but it's almost like going through the eyes in the head, like nerfed it. Because when Godzilla rips off Mechagodzilla's head and realizes, like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Okay, he tosses the head to the side, which is awesome. And then he starts to rush at Mechagodzilla again, and this upgraded beam hits him and knocks him like on his ass, and it just seems like so much stronger. So I just love little details like that show that like the aliens have learned that they didn't just rebuild Mechagodzilla with some of the same weaknesses or flaws. This is upgraded, and I fucking love it. They got rid of the they got rid of the terrible transformations from the first film. So in the first film, when they die or they're injured, they for some reason turn into apes, and like the whole movie freezes. This horrible like metamorphosis animation plays on their body or their skin, and then they look like they're from Planet of the Apes. They got rid of that. Thank you. But the thing is, they got rid of it for something that's maybe even dumber, depending on how you interpret it. But it only happens once in the film. But one of the main characters, he's been captured by the aliens, and he's in their base. He's able to break free of the ropes that had his hands tied behind his Ichinose. But anyway, he breaks free, and he takes these ropes that were used to tie him up, grabs one of the aliens around the neck and chokes him to death. Oddly enough, I don't know how you'll feel about this. I think it's kind of cool. They contrast it with Godzilla's final moments with Mechagodzilla. So when Godzilla grabs Mechagodzilla by the neck again, starts punching him and choking Mechagodzilla and then breaking his neck, they kind of flip back and forth between like this human fighting, one of the aliens, and Godzilla fighting Mechagodzilla, and they're kind of doing the same moves. It's kind of cool. There's a part of me that, like, when during that moment, I don't really want to see what the humans are doing. I just want to see this moment with Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. I do think the first time it happened might be more iconic because it's uninterrupted pretty much. However, I do think that they did what they did well. Even if I would prefer it with no interruptions, the contrast of the two fight scenes, it's pretty cool. It's not horrible, so I don't hate it or anything. Anyway, when he chokes the alien to death, the alien, like, I don't know why they do this in this film. Their faces, their actual faces, they look like burn victims, or lizards or something. To me, they look like burn victims. I've heard them described as looking like toads or lizards or something like that. I'm not really sure. But what's weird about it is that, in the first film, like if he was choking an alien to death, they would have froze the frame, and then they would have done the animation, and then they would have looked like an ape. In this one, they literally have the actor, like the alien actor, just rip off his own face mask and reveal it. And I found that really confusing. I was like, why would you do that? Why would you have the actor rip off his own like fake face to reveal his real face while he's dying? Like, I don't know what you're going for there. The only thing that I can, like, my most generous interpretation of that scene is that the aliens were injured at the end of the first movie, when their command center exploded, etc. So maybe it's burns or injuries that they sustained at the end of the first movie, and they are wearing masks so that they can blend in on Earth to conduct their business, etc., etc. That's the only thing that I can assume. But it's not really made clear. So it's just weird. I'm so glad they got rid of the transformations because they were so bad and silly and goofy. But this was, in my opinion, equally silly without any clear explanation. So, I don't know. I choose to believe that they were injured at the end of the first movie, that they, were burned and disfigured at the end of the first film, and they're wearing masks. I just don't know why. I don't know why they did that. Also, the acting. So the villains in this film, the aliens from Black Hole Planet 3, are very, very tropey. A lot of the acting in this film, I think, is more tropey and dramatic than in the previous film. I think that like it feels like every 20 or 30 minutes the aliens are doing like the villain laugh. Like they're doing that, and they do it multiple times, and it's cringe every time. I mean, look, I know that this movie takes place in 1975, and blah blah blah, movies were different, sign of the time, trends, blah blah blah. I get it, bro. I do. But I don't think that there's any time period where that's just not cringe to me. You know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being arrogant in saying that, but I just feel like it's cringe. You know, especially to repeat it multiple times in the film. And then even with Katsura, her acting at times is a little, to me, over the top. It's kind of that way across the board. Some characters do it more than others. Like obviously, the villains do it the most. And then with Katsura, I think that her name was Tomoko AI. Sorry if I pronounced her name wrong. I think overall, I want to be clear. I think she overall did a great job. She really made me care about her character. I think she does a great job because at the beginning of the film, when our characters are introduced to her, our characters are investigating Dr. Mifune because Titanosaurus destroys a sub. So you have Interpol and marine biologists and stuff. They're investigating the destruction of the sub. And, the last thing that the sub got off in their communications was that a dinosaur was attacking them. So that leads them to Dr. Mifune because obviously he was ostracized from the science community because he found a dinosaur that he was going to control. So they go to Dr. Mifune's residence and they meet his daughter. She does a great job. You can tell when you meet her the first time, when you first meet Katsura, that something's off about the way she acts. She acts robotic, but not like over the top robotic. She shows just enough humanity to maybe just enough to make you think something's off about her character. At various points in the film, she acts more or less robotic depending on the situation. And I love it because I think it's actually great acting on her part, and I think it makes sense. Like when she's trying to get to know Ichinose, the marine biologist, the one that she, ends up having like a love relationship with. Although, it could just be one sided. It's we'll get to that in a minute. But when she's around him and she's trying to get information for her father or learn more about what he's doing, she acts more human and acts more like a regular person. And then, when she's around her father or the aliens, she acts more robotic. And then, when she realizes that, the aliens are aliens and they want to destroy humanity and that her father is going to work with them, you see her emotions come out again and they end up having to address that. They end up, they do this weird scene where one of the aliens, it almost looks like he's holding a pen and he shoots a laser at her in the back of the head. And they do like some work on her, and like I don't know if they do some surgery or some work on her the robotics of her or whatever, but they try to tune out the humanity and get her back into, listen, we need you full of hate, we need you full of vengeance, because your emotional hatred for what humans did to you and your family and your father is going to drive the monsters as well. In fact, it's worth noting that there's lore for Titanosaurus that Titanosaurus is actually a very gentle dinosaur. It's not aggressive. It typically does not attack. It's a gentle giant. But because it's under the control of Dr. Mifune and Katsura, because they are controlling it and amplifying its emotions, they're making it more aggressive. They're commanding it to attack. And later in the film, the humans figure out a way to basically interfere with that signal and get rid of it so that Titanosaurus is no longer under Dr. Mifune's control. I thought that was so interesting, and it makes even Titanosaurus a bit of a tragic monster. And I actually think that that's the reason why Godzilla doesn't kill. Godzilla fucking destroys Mechagodzilla at the end of this film, which is awesome. But he doesn't kill Titanosaurus. He ends up shooting Titanosaurus with his breath a couple of times, and Titanosaurus like falls over a mountain cliff into the ocean. There's big explosions, but I don't think that Titanosaurus explicitly dies at the end of this film, and I think that's why. Because Titanosaurus in and of itself is a little bit tragic because it's a gentle creature that's being controlled and manipulated to attack and fight Godzilla and all this other stuff. I just wish they would have they had the opportunity to do more with it. They had the opportunity to, by the way, in the girl that wrote this script and submitted it to Toho, in her original script, there were two Titan monsters. and it ended up being cut down to just one for budgetary reasons. So again, that's why I suspect the budget might have been a little bit less than Mechagodzilla 1. I'm not sure. But I just wanted to note that because she did such a great job writing this, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, when the signal's cut off and Titanosaurus is no longer being controlled, they had the opportunity, and I was really curious to see if Titanosaurus would go back to being gentle, like stop fighting, leave on its own, etc., etc. They end up not going that direction, and I feel like maybe they felt like it would not be as satisfying of an ending, which I kind of understand, to be honest with you, because, I mean, imagine, because, I mean, Titanosaurus has some great fight scenes with Godzilla and, destroys Tokyo with Mechagodzilla. But, Titanosaurus doesn't have, like, beam attacks or anything. It has, like, its tail can open up like a wing, and it can it just shakes its ass basically and creates these winds that just destroy and just wipe away buildings and blows Godzilla away and all this other stuff. But its actual fighting with Godzilla is mostly hand to hand boxing and headbutting and kicking. And Titanosaurus is actually a fucking badass dude. It's boxing with Godzilla. Like I said, the hand to hand combat for these two, that's their fighting. Like with Mechagodzilla, it's a lot of beams, it's a lot of missiles. And Godzilla having to use his breath and get through his attacks in more ranged combat. But with Titanosaurus versus Godzilla, it's all hand to hand, and it's fucking excellent, man. Titanosaurus even has this scene where it gets Godzilla down and is uppercutting Godzilla in the face, kicking Godzilla in the face to stand him up, then grabs him by the mouth and starts uppercutting him right in the throat, even bites him on his lip and starts punching him in the throat, and lifting Godzilla's body up, parallel to the ground. Godzilla falls back to his feet. He punches him again. And Godzilla has really good scenes, with Titanosaurus too, tackling him, punching him, headbutting him, throwing his head from the side. I don't know if Godzilla uses his tail a lot, but the boxing is just tremendous, and the fights look great. And the standoff, I think that Godzilla and Titanosaurus have one of the best standoffs so far in the franchise. Their first meeting, which is iconic because the first meeting is Titanosaurus comes on land, and this is 30 something minutes into the film, by the way. So I really feel like that's worth noting, that you don't get Titanosaurus does not make landfall until around 44 minutes into the film. So when if you were to ask me, Rex, you're glazing this film mostly, right? You seem to really like what this film is doing well. Why do you think that so many people were lukewarm on it, or divided on it, or why is it sitting at a 6 out of 10 everywhere? I think that this is why. It's not until 44 minutes into the film that Titanosaurus makes landfall. And even then, it's just some decent scenes versus the army. And those scenes are broken up with a nonsensical Katsura chase sequence. The aliens doing that tropey laugh that I told you I couldn't stand. And you're just thinking hey, this is Terror of Mechagodzilla. Where the fuck is Mechagodzilla? Now at the end of Titanosaurus's attack at 44 minutes into the film, because the entire first half hour or more, the first probably 40 minutes of this film is literally just introducing Titanosaurus, Mechagodzilla, the main characters, and lore dumping and setting up story stuff. I don't have a problem with them trying to write a good movie. I don't have a problem with them trying to tell a really good human story with the monsters. But I think the mistake that they made, and I think that a lot of Godzilla films make this mistake, is one, they wait too long to give you a really good monster sequence, whether it's Godzilla or another monster. You know, when you do get Godzilla here, it's around 46, 47 minutes in. The reveal is sick because Titanosaurus is destroying Tokyo at night, and the camera pans around Tokyo, like the buildings that are still standing. And so you just see the skyline, and you just see all these buildings, like a big city, and it's dark, so you just see the silhouettes. You just see buildings, and the camera's panning, and it gets to one building, and all of a sudden Godzilla's head comes up above the building. And it's just to silence, to just the sounds of like alarms and like burning, buildings, and like just the ambience of the destruction. And then you just see Godzilla's head come up, and it's just the silhouette. Fucking sick. And they improved his suit here. He looks mean as fuck in the face. It's just an incredible reveal. But then they start fighting, and Godzilla hits Titanosaurus, I think, once with his breath, and it's a very short fight. I think you do maybe get some hand-to-hand fighting sequence in that first fight, but Titanosaurus retreats quickly. I think something happens in that sequence maybe that affects Titanosaurus's like reception or their control over him. I can't remember. I'm just going to keep it real with you. I can't remember exactly why Titanosaurus retreats, but they have a really short fight, and Titanosaurus just like suddenly stops fighting, and Godzilla's like, what are we doing? I'm still ready to go. And then Titanosaurus just leaves, and Godzilla's like, the fuck? The suit actors, by the way, do an incredible job. I think this is some of the best suit acting in the entire franchise for everybody involved. And I said that about Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. It still holds true here. But again, 44 minutes before you get Titanosaurus on land attacking the city. It has a fight with the army that's short, and it's broken up with nonsense that's not good human scenes. The Katsura chase scene, though, for anybody that's seen this film, it's really interesting. They do this thing where, like, one of the Interpol agents is chasing Katsura, and as she, like, starts to, like, go around a building or something, the editing is, like, she disappears. Like, so, like, if this is Katsura and she's running behind something, you would expect that she would run behind the building, and then they would cut to the characters that are chasing her. But instead, they have her run, and as she's getting to where she's going, they just blip her out of the scene entirely. It makes her look like alien or like mysterious or like really it's almost kind of creepy how they do it multiple times. She'll just like start to move out of camera view, but then just blip out instead of like actually just organically leaving the camera view. It's interesting because, like, part of me is like, is that an editing mistake? But then you see it done like 3 times in a row, and you're like, okay, it's not an editing mistake. They're just it's interesting. It's with her being a robot and working with, at the time, like, she's a robot, but she's with another guy that's like a custodian for her father, and he's just a regular guy as far as I can tell. So it's weird. It's weird. But it's also different. So I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just want to mention that. But back to the thing that I've been trying to say for the last 10 minutes. 44 minutes before Titanosaurus makes landfall. Fight with the army that's broken up with human scenes that aren't very good. Where is Mechagodzilla? Godzilla's reveal is sick, but then the fight is really, really, really short. And then you do not get Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla does not even launch until 58 minutes into this film. And this film is like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. How long is this film? So Mechagodzilla, it's an hour. It's 1 hour 23 minutes. 1 hour 23 minutes. And Mechagodzilla does not launch until 58 minutes into the film. And at the 1 hour mark, you have Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus destroying Tokyo. Here, Godzilla's intro to the final fight is super lame. Basically, you have like some kids that like Titanosaurus and Mechagodzilla are fucking mass murdering everyone in the city. I mean, like, Mechagodzilla is shooting its beams and destroying entire blocks at once. And for some fucking reason, I don't know who came up with this. No offense to the girl that wrote the script. I don't know who put this in, but this is terrible. You have these kids on like a school playground and they see the monsters coming, and two of the kids are like, well, I'm gonna go over there and get a better look at it. Fucking what? And they go to do it, and then Titanosaurus like sees them or whatever, starts coming towards them. They're about to die, and then randomly, for no reason, well, I don't want to say for no reason, because Godzilla did, save the world from Mechagodzilla before, but it's just weird, like, these kids just start screaming like, Godzilla help, and then Godzilla just like pops up out of nowhere and runs and chases down and tackles Titanosaurus. I just think that the entire scene makes no sense. It's way too unrealistic and unbelievable and immersion breaking, and I fucking hated it. It felt like something out of Son of Godzilla, or Godzilla's Revenge, or whatever. It felt like something from that era that did not belong in this film. I hated it. And then, like, so Godzilla appears, like maybe 1 hour and 5 minutes, 1 hour and 3 minutes, 1 hour, 2 minutes, somewhere around there. So you get what? You get basically a solid 20 minutes, pretty much, of the final fight of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus. And what I can say is that I think the final fight is fucking incredible. And I think it's one of the best fights, one of the best battles in the history of the franchise up to this point, personally speaking. Is it better than Godzilla and King Caesar versus Mechagodzilla? Ha. I I think they're about even, man. I'm just gonna say it. I really think they're about even, because I think that they do. Ah, man, they're both so good. They're both so good. The fact that I'm having the fact I would have to watch both side by side, honestly, in order to be able to tell you. But the fact that I'm even like having trouble deciding, I think is a huge testament to the final fight scene in this film. I think it's really, really good. Um, there's just several scenes that are so good here. Like when Titanosaurus and Godzilla are like boxing it out and standing off. Like Godzilla really has beef with Titanosaurus from that first fight. So it's kind of funny when he shows up, he kind of ignores Mechagodzilla at first. Like he's like, bitch, we got unfinished business, me and you. So he's fighting Titanosaurus and they're standing off. Incredible standoff. They do this really cool thing where they just have Mechagodzilla just watching. And even though Mechagodzilla is a robot, I don't know what it is about it, but it looks so fucking cool when they show Godzilla and and Titanosaurus squaring off and then boxing, and they just show Mechagodzilla watching, just waiting, not doing anything, not helping Titanosaurus, not helping Godzilla, obviously, just watching. And something about it is just fucking cinema to me. I don't know how to describe it. And then, of course, like Mechagodzilla picks the perfect time to get involved. It waits until Godzilla gets the upper hand, and Godzilla does this really cool thing where it picks Titanosaurus up and like presses Titanosaurus above its head. And then Mechagodzilla shoots Godzilla in the back of the neck with like its beam, and Godzilla falls, drops Titanosaurus on top of himself, and then they start double teaming Godzilla and beating his ass. And it's fucking awesome, dude. And that's kind of like a theme in this fight, that anytime Godzilla starts to get an upper hand with Titanosaurus, Mechagodzilla attacks Godzilla and sabotages him. And it leads to this really cool sequence where, after Titanosaurus beats Godzilla up, where I was talking about he bites Godzilla on the mouth and punches him repeatedly and is just like kicking him in the face, punching him in the face. He leaves Godzilla standing there stunned, and then Mechagodzilla, they do this. The cinematography this is some of the best cinematography. They love to do this scene in this movie where they show Mechagodzilla and they start to zoom in on Mechagodzilla's face, and then they'll cut to his hand, and his hand is like this, and obviously like once his hand turns, that's when the finger rockets shoot out, and that's one of his best weapons. So he'll be like aiming, and it'll like start zooming in on his face, and it'll cut to his hand, and it'll cut back to his face, still zooming in, and it'll cut back to that hand, and it just, and with the music, it just builds up this tension of like, oh my god. And then when that shit finally turns and it clicks and he fires, it's just so awesome. It's just so awesome. They give you so many awesome scenes here. That's why, like I say, like I just cannot bring myself to give this movie a 6. I really think this movie's like an 8 to me, because there's just like, I could probably name like 10 iconic scenes in this film, like 10 really like A tier, S tier scenes. And so it's like, for, I think it makes more mistakes than Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, but I also think it gives you just as many, if not more, like iconic moments. In the final battle, and even with some of the characters. I mean, you have your first suicide, you have Katsura being operated on with her breast exposed, like nudity, and like her heart is exposed, and they're operating on her. And then like her strange love relationship with Ichinose, which is, I think, poorly built up, because I mean, like, they have a couple of meetings where they talk a little bit, but there's no real love connection being built. You don't feel like anything is really being built. You don't see this organic growth of emotional connection between them. And then all of a sudden at the end of the film, like, he can, he tells her he loves her, and it's clear that he loves her. And, she's mostly a robot, so it's hard to tell if she has feelings for him. You get the feeling that she does care about him, a lot, because she pleads with him not to go on any submarine missions to find Titanosaurus, because she doesn't want him to die. But it's a little bit more vague, just whether or not she's in love with him too. But in her final moments, she's been injured, and he's holding her, and he's like wants to save her, and she's saying, "You have to kill me, because Mechagodzilla's controller is in me. You have to kill me." And he refuses to do it, so she reaches over and grabs one of the alien's guns while he's holding her, and she shoots herself in the side, in her ribs, and she commits suicide. She kills herself to save them and save humanity. And it's a very touching scene, even if I don't feel like the emotional buildup was done very well. It's still extremely touching, and the ending is extremely touching. But yeah, I mean, they just do a lot of things in this movie that I love, and the monster scenes are fucking great. And I was talking about the buildup with Mechagodzilla sabotaging Godzilla. Eventually, they beat Godzilla so bad, Mechagodzilla, does the hand turn and then shoots the missiles in Godzilla's mouth. And Godzilla just like falls face down and seems to be like knocked out. Titanosaurus kicks him, and Godzilla goes flying over into a mountain and falls into like a grave, basically. They bury Godzilla under the earth. And then Titanosaurus walks over to where Godzilla is buried and just starts bouncing on that earth, bouncing on Godzilla's grave, like jumping up and down on Godzilla's grave. Fucking sick, And what ends up happening is, the humans end up interfering with that signal to, that controls Titanosaurus, and then Titanosaurus starts to go crazy and like gets off of Godzilla's grave. Mechagodzilla sees the helicopter that they're basically shooting a supersonic waves or something that interfere with the signal that controls Titanosaurus. They shoot that via a rocket. They shoot like a receptor onto Titanosaurus, and then they shoot the beam at Titanosaurus, but they're in a helicopter. So Mechagodzilla sees the helicopter, and they do that zoom in again on the hand, and he's about to like destroy the helicopter. This is, again, fucking iconic. They do the zoom on his face. They go from Mechagodzilla's face to hand, and then the click. But before Mechagodzilla can shoot, Godzilla bursts out of the grave and shoots Mechagodzilla with his breath, gets out of the grave, and starts. That's when the sequence happens where he's running at Mechagodzilla. And it's so funny because while he's charging at Mechagodzilla, and Mechagodzilla starts shooting at him, Titanosaurus is between them. Like, Titanosaurus is like, what the fuck is going on? Godzilla gets the Titanosaurus and literally just grabs Titanosaurus and throws him out of the fucking way. I'm not fighting you anymore. Get the fuck out of my way. I like Godzilla is like locked on to Mechagodzilla, and it's just fucking so funny because you think like maybe he's gonna fight Titanosaurus. He's running at Titanosaurus, but as soon as he gets to Titanosaurus, he grabs him and just tosses him like. And I feel so bad for the suit actor because it looked like a hard throw. Like this dude does a full flip and lands on the back of his neck, and it looks pretty rough for the suit actor. But Godzilla tosses his ass like, "Get the fuck out of my way," and just beams straight to Mechagodzilla, and it's awesome. And and then breaks his neck again. And then Mechagodzilla is using the powered up beam from the new like bulb that is under the head, and Katsura kills herself, which disables Mechagodzilla. Godzilla fucking starts beating the shit out of it, throws Mechagodzilla into like a shallow grave, and then shoots it with his breath and just makes it explode everywhere. It's awesome. It's awesome. I think that I think Mechagodzilla looked extremely strong in the film. I think Titanosaurus looked extremely strong in the film. I think Godzilla looked strong in the film. The ending is extremely sad, with Katsura. But I think that the criticism of the film that a lot of people are going to have is that, they sacrificed over half of this film, really, to really build up these human characters and this human story, and they try to give you a lot, they try to give you as much Titanosaurus as they can in the first like 45 minutes. I mean, Titanosaurus opens the movie destroying the sub, and then you get like, a couple of other scenes with Titanosaurus and, the aliens talking about Mechagodzilla. But this is Terror of Mechagodzilla. It's a direct sequel to Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And if I had to guess, I would say that fans really did not appreciate, this film is like an hour and 25 minutes. And the first 45 minutes are all about like the human characters and Titanosaurus. And you don't get Mechagodzilla until an hour into the film. 58 minutes, right? Like, yeah. 1 hour into the film before you get Mechagodzilla. And I think that, after the previous film, if, for me personally, if I'm going to see this direct sequel, I'm there for Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and you don't get that until the very end. Godzilla spends probably the majority of that fight fighting Titanosaurus. Now, the fight scenes are great. I think they're great, but I think that they may have mismanaged audience expectations here. And I think that people probably had complaints about how long it took for the monsters to appear on screen, and how little Mechagodzilla is actually in the film, and how little Godzilla actually fights Mechagodzilla. I think that those would be some of the main concerns that people would have. And then I think that like, some of the tropey, overdramatic acting really didn't help, because you made the human characters and the storyline with the aliens such a big part of this film, and then some of it is just so silly. There's editing mistakes. Like there's a scene where Katsura is meeting with Ichinose, and they're talking about Dr. Mifune, and they're talking about Titanosaurus, and Dr. Mifune has one of his like custodians or one of his employees that helps like basically care for his estate, like his yard. Looks like a handyman or somebody that like cleans his house or maintains the house and the yard or whatever. But basically, they have this guy stalking Katsura, but the way that they film it is terrible. Like they show Katsura talking to Ichinose in different areas, and then they just cut to this guy in his car looking around in his car for like 2 seconds, and then they cut back. And you're supposed to put it together in your head that he's like following them, but they don't show that. They just show awkward 2-3 second clips of him like looking out his window in his car and then cutting back to them, and it's just really weirdly filmed and presented. It's genuinely kind of awful because I know what they're trying to show, and it's terrible the way it's done. And then during the final fight, they have an editing mistake that's almost like unforgivable. Right after the really cool scene where Godzilla charges Mechagodzilla, throws Titanosaurus out of the way. He runs through. I timed it, and it's like a solid, like 50 seconds or more, maybe slightly over a minute of Godzilla. It's somewhere between like 45 and a minute 15 seconds of like this scene of Godzilla running through everything that Mechagodzilla can throw at him, even catching on fire, getting hit several times, like stopping and slowing down and looking like he's about to like fall and then continues going, which that itself is kind of like cut weird because there's no real transition. It just looks like he's like about to pass out and then they cut to him running again. It's kind of weird, but it's like not that big of a deal. Anyway, after he does this and he tackles Mechagodzilla, they cut away to the humans. When they cut back, Godzilla's on his knees and Titanosaurus is beating the fuck out of him and kicking him in the face, and Mechagodzilla's watching again. I genuinely don't know what the fuck happened there. It has to be a mistake. It has to be some sort of mistake. And as far as I know, this is not some American edit of the film. I don't know, but it stands out because it's like it's one of the coolest moments in the fight, followed immediately, I mean fucking immediately, by a huge editing mistake that I think brings it down. So that's what I mean when I say that this movie is a bit of a mixed bag. It really is. And, I think that I could see, like, if you're a Godzilla fan, I could totally understand a 7. I think it's probably an 8 for how many incredible, memorable moments it gives you, but I do think it makes some serious mistakes as well. I could totally see a 7. I think if you're just like, if you're judging this film not as a Godzilla fan, but just, it's just a movie to you. You're not watching it as a Godzilla fan, you're just watching it as a movie. Then I could see a 5 or a 6. Sure. Not what I would give it, but I think the 6 is fair if you're just kind of judging it more objectively. But I'm not. I'm judging it as a fan of the franchise. For me, like, I think the good outweighs the bad, but there's definitely more bad in here than, in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, there were relatively few missteps, in my opinion. It wasn't a perfect film, but there were relatively few mistakes. It was a very strong film with very few mistakes. Here, I think they reach for more with the human story, and I think they do some really interesting things that's worth watching. But I also think that there are some like big missteps in the dialogue, in the acting and directing, editing mistakes. Some of the build up and pacing I think is, flawed. But, this film still does some incredible things. And I think as far as this being the end of the Showa era, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it overall. I really am. I think the Showa era starts off really strong, and then it dips a little bit, and then I think it has some strong moments in the middle with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and Invasion of Astro Monster. To me, those were strong. And then it dips again, and I mean, it dips really fucking low with, Hedorah, Megalon, Gigan. Still moments in those films I loved. Wasted potential for sure. Monsters that I'd like to see again, but objectively, I think that those were some pretty rough, bad films. But then, here at the end, to cap it off with Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and this direct sequel, Terror of Mechagodzilla, and now we get a 9-year break, and the return of Godzilla is our next review. I'm So excited to talk about it. I'm really nervous to watch this film. I'm really nervous to watch this film from like an analytical perspective because God, man, I don't want to say anything negative about my favorite movie. It's probably my favorite movie of all time, just about, to be honest with you. I mean, it's the one. So for my child, it's the movie. So, uh, I'm nervous about how it'll hold up. And if you're wondering, I am going to watch The Return of Godzilla, the Japanese version first, and then I'm going to watch Godzilla 1985 with Raymond Burr returning. So I am going to watch both films, and in my review, just like I did with the original Gojira and Godzilla King of the Monsters, I'm going to review both films and give my thoughts on both films in the same video. So that'll be next. Look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much. I know that there's some stuff that I forgot to mention because I didn't read directly from my notes. So I know that there's stuff that I missed. There's definitely some notes that I missed. In fact, in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, we get our first ever beam lock. I totally forgot to mention that. That's what happens in the first fight between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. They beam lock, huge explosion, and that's when all the blood comes up in the water and you think maybe Godzilla's either dead or very seriously injured. I forgot to mention that in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and I'm sure I forgot something here, but overall, man, I still love this movie. This is still, I think, one of the stronger Showa era films. I think it does make some unfortunate mistakes that hold it back from being like, a 9 or a 10 in my book. And maybe even hold it back from being an 8. I think I'm going to be generous and say 8, and that's just what it is for me. But yeah, that's it. I'm dragging it out. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Subscribe if you like Godzilla movie reviews, and maybe one day when I finish these Godzilla movie reviews, if people like this, maybe I'll do more. We'll see. All right, take care. Bye.